And joining me now for an exclusive interview is Andrzej Byrt, former Polish ambassador to Germany and France. Good evening to you, Mr. Ambassador.
I didn't understand.
Good evening. Good evening.
So 20,000 people reportedly took to the streets in Erfurt today protesting against the AfD. At the same time, the party's annual conference got underway. The leadership was reconfirmed. Buoyed by the popularity that has seen the party rise by the day, spell it out for me. What is going on here? Why is Germany facing such a clear political divide?
As a matter of fact, the growth of potential political strength of Alternative für Deutschland, Alternative for Germany, the right-wing party, far beyond the limits of CDU, the Christian Democrats, who were for years, since practically the restoration of the Federal Republic of Germany, the leading right-wing party. So the growth of strength started, as a matter of fact, after the pandemic and after the big crisis, which did touch Germany political and economic scene in 2008-12. Since then, the right-wing party, AfD, is growing in strength not only in selective first eastern lands, former GDR, but also on the entire territory of Germany. It is connected with deficiencies which, in the meantime, have emerged on the political scene, and the deficiencies were connected, on the other hand, with the sense of weakening the Germany economy and the different discussions which took place during last few years. Also, the collapse of the former existing in Germany confrontation between the left side, Social Democrats, and right-wing Christian Democratic parties have pushed quite a number of Germans to understand that the so far stable system has begun to tremble, and they lost confidence in either the left or the right partners, which for years have been ruling the country. So, taking also into account the aggression of Russia on Ukraine and the very precise, after certain doubts, position of Social Democrats and Christian Democrats and their critics of the Putin's regime has touched those living particularly in the eastern lands of Germany to remind their very long traditions of some sort of a compromise they were living through with the Soviet army's representatives living on their territories, very many of East Germans who, although being oppressed by the communist system, but nonetheless got used to it, and to a certain point, they were disagreeing with official policy of two ruling parties, Social Democrats and Christian Democrats. So as a result, those people on the wave of rejecting both so far traditional leaders of political scene in Germany, they started to give applause to statements presented by the leaders of AfD and criticizing the governments because of their rejection of cooperation with Russia, and also by criticizing their inadequate response to the shock after both the pandemic and the collapse of growth rhythm of German economy and the difficult economic situation which the opposition said the rulers are not ready or professional enough to counteract. As a result, the growing numbers of supporters and their more and more opening message to the entire German society we are now on the growing path, and probably we are ready to take power in the oncoming elections.
Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned the East. That brings me to the possible political ramifications we could see over the coming months, because in September the AfD is aiming to pick up its first absolute majority and state governorship in the likes of Saxony-Anhalt. I'm curious, what would that mean in practice if the AfD takes over a state government?
Well, if it happens that in Saxony, for instance, they take the power, the entire Germany will be observing what are results of it and what the local government, if it's elected and if AfD is the ruling party, what will be their actions. In their program, they were more radical at the very beginning. And now, approaching the likelihood of winning such elections, they are trying to, however, I would say, to smooth the message they are trying to send to the potential voters, because they like to say that we are those who, however, would like to reconstruct the way of the operation in individual in our land, in this case in Saxony. So it'll be a big experiment if they win, because if they manage not to create a number of conflicts and to get a stabilized way of ruling the land, then it can act as a spreading fire, which then can persuade also other electors in other lands where elections will be following, so to say, this year and the next year as well. So it's a critical state in which Germany is founding itself now, and it's very difficult to say what will be the result, but according to today's polls, AfD probably will be the winner. So Germany is now in a very difficult position because if the ruling party, AfD, if they win, turns out to be an effective one, then it can have a rather negative impact on the other lands awaiting their elections, and it can then make that the presence of AfDP on different forums in different lands, particularly, as I said, first in the east, but then it's not to be excluded that they also can win in some western part of Germany. So it will be a rather disastrous to the entire political system in Germany, but also, if it happens, to some extent, on the role of Germany in the European Union, and who knows, also such a results can influence also the results of presidential elections in France next year.
Now, very briefly, because we're running out of time, I want to pick up on your reference earlier to Russia. The elephant in the room here is the AfD's ties and warmth towards Russia. If they're granted the keys to power, either at a state level or at some point at a national level, are you worried that sensitive information could end up in the Kremlin's hands? And we are running out of time, so very briefly, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, we have to wait because different things may happen on the national scene. But so far, the popularity of AfD also on national level is growing. So first, if they win in Saxony, for instance, that may have influence. However, also the political convictions at the overall national levels in Germany as well. So we are approaching a very critical stage of German political life.
Andrzej Byrt, former Polish ambassador to Germany and France, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all for World News tonight here on TVP World. Do stay with us for more news and analysis. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.